Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Hannah if you're new here, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing this wild young adult sci-fi novel, Iron Widow by Jiren J. Zhao. I spent a long time practicing their name. This is an absolute wild novel and I have so many mixed feelings about it. I absolutely loved it, first of all. But upon reading this book, it kind of opened my eyes, or it made me realize some things about my own reading and my personal reading tastes that I wanted to discuss on camera. So I'm going to start off by giving you a plot summary and go into my talking points. First off, this book is unhinged. It is so wild, but also extremely powerful. This is about a young girl named Wu Zetian, and this is a story based off of sci-fi elements, anime elements, as well as drawing from Chinese history. This is kind of a loose retelling of the only female empress of China, who was Wu Zetian. But it is not historically accurate. Obviously, it's set in the future. It's a dystopian world. And the plot of this book is basically aliens are attacking this planet and the humans are trying to defend themselves. And they do this by piloting giant creatures that they call chrysalises, and they use their chi to control the mecha, essentially. And the one issue with this system is that boys are given like the head pilot seat, and they basically use female co-pilots as batteries and suck them dry of their chi and ultimately killing them in order to pilot their mechas. And our main character's older sister volunteered to be a pilot and was murdered by her pilot before she could even go into battle. Our main character, Zetian, is trying to get revenge, so she volunteers to be part of the pilot program so she can hunt down this pilot and kill him. And she's also planning on upending the entire pilot system because it is clearly super sexist and she doesn't want any more girls to be murdered. This novel is incredibly fast-paced and plot-driven. It is big and grand and violent. There's all these aliens attacking. As far as the representation in this book, we have the heart of the story. There is a polyamorous relationship. Two of the characters are queer men, and there is also our main character goes by she, her pronouns, but she talks about how gender is just a social construct and how she feels like she doesn't really fit into solely the female category. So possible non-binary rep, or at least discussions around gender and non-binary-ness. Let me start off by talking about the romance in this book. So at the heart of the story is a polyamorous relationship where Wu Zetian falls in love with, has relationships with two young adults, I should say. And then those two boys are also in a relationship with each other. So they form like a closed triangle. So they're all dating each other in a triad. These characters felt really emotionally mature for 18, 19, and 20-year-olds, discussing what they wanted out of a relationship. And also the idea of love is not finite. Just because you love one person doesn't mean it takes away the love of another person. And I just thought there was a line in there that spoke, was similar to that. And I thought that was beautiful and really quite mature. And so unique to finally see young adult have polyamory representation and to talk about different types of relationships in the young adult age range. Now, I think the funniest thing about the romance in this book is that there's kind of a antagonistic character, and he approaches Wu Zetian and says, Now, don't get caught in a love triangle. And I honestly felt that that was the author kind of calling out the love triangle trope, where there's basically one, in young adult typically it's one girl and two guys are vying for her love, but this book is like, F that, why can't they all be in a relationship? So I just really appreciated the polyamory in this. So any of my poly friends out there, this was great. So I think the romance is the perfect balance in this book. It is definitely a subplot, so it's not really a main focus in this book, but I think it was, what did I call it, a Goldilocks. It was just right. You know, just enough for us to care about the relationships without overpowering the narrative, because this is still a very plot-driven story. In general, I'd say I'm more of a character-driven reader, but I still absolutely adored this book, and the wildness of this plot just really sucked me in. Let's talk about genre and age range and what that means for this book in particular, and for me as a 27-year-old reading a book targeted for 13 to 18-year-olds. I have been reading more and more adult fiction as I've gotten older. You know, my reading tastes have just changed a little bit. And the one thing that jumped out to me is, would I give a 13-year-old this book? Because the young adult age range caters to both a 13-year-old all the way up to an 18-year-old. And in my opinion, 13-year-olds and 18-year-olds are very, very different in their maturity level and their reading tastes. So as I was reading this book, I was like, okay, it touches on much more adult, much more dark themes. So our main character kills somebody. She straight up murders a person. She tortures and then murders another person. And like the way the sexism is in this book, it's really, really disturbing, actually. Obviously, I'm not a publisher, I'm not a teenager, so I can't speak to what that means. But to me, it felt like this book conceptually was an adult novel, but was sort of aged down to fit that 13 to 18-year-old age range. You know what I mean? There were some things, like there was some sexy time, but it was the characters would initiate by like kissing, and then they would start to take their clothes off, and then it would fade to black, or it would end the scene or end the chapter, and they would move on. So this was not explicit sex. So I'm like, and also as an adult, I don't want to read about teenagers doing the deed. So there's that as well. But it felt like we got, 85% of the way there. If this was an adult novel, we would have gone all the way. You know what I mean? So I have conflicted feelings about that as an adult. To me, it just stood out as like, this could have been an adult novel so easily by simply aging up the characters a year or two and just going even deeper into some of those themes and kind of leaning into it a little bit more. It felt a little like the author was holding back just a smidge. The thing that I enjoy about young adult is it feels very comforting. There are some tropes that I just gravitate towards in the young adult category, and it feels very comforting. And so this book took some of those tropes and spun them on their head and made something really interesting and unique out of it, which I appreciated, and which is why I keep reading young adult, is to see what these new authors are coming out with and taking these tropes that I love and morphing them into something new. So if you're a young adult reader, this book, I think, perfectly bridges the gap between a young adult and the adult age range. For my personal taste, I wish this was an adult novel, but I still really, really enjoyed this. And again, I still gave it 5 out of 5 stars. I still thought it was incredible. One true criticism that I have for this book, for the fact that it is a young adult book, is it's short. This is the start of a series. I have no idea how long the series is going to be, but it is book 1 in a series, which is good to know. If this book was a little bit longer, I feel like we would have gotten more character work in this book. Like I said earlier, this is a really plot-driven book, and in general, I'm more of a character-driven reader. So something that I found was missing for my personal enjoyment was more character growth. Again, this is book 1 in a series, so hopefully we'll see continued character growth in book 2 and beyond, however long this series ends up being. This is primarily told from one perspective. This is all told through Wu Zetian's perspective. So we don't get to see the two boys' experience and their mental turmoil. So that was another thing that I was like, we felt a little removed from those characters. And the villain was also like kind of superficial in that way. And the aliens are just like faceless, emotionless giant creatures. So not a lot of character there either. So I feel like if this book was longer or it was an adult novel, it would have just spent that much more time with the characters. And that's just for my personal preference. I just want to spend more time with these characters. Even though I did love them in this book, I just wanted more. So hopefully book 2 will deliver on that. So overall, I gave this book 5 out of 5 stars. I thought this book was absolutely wild, absolutely unhinged. I thought it was great. It was so much fun. I've been reading a lot of like mediocre books lately, and this was just like a bright star. Like finally something to hold on to and actually made me feel something. This book made me feel powerful. The power of women. So there were points in this book where I like raised my fists in the air and I was like, yes! And I was screaming from just like the pure joy of the feminine in this book and how powerful that can be, and F the patriarchy. This book is so feminist. I loved it so much. And it made me feel powerful for being a woman. And what else can I say? I truly enjoyed this book, and I recommend it for both young adult and adult readers. I think this is a good bridge book that really anyone can enjoy. I would say check out trigger warnings for this book though. Again, it does explore those darker themes, so just be wary before you pick this one up. But those are all my thoughts. Those are all my feelings about Iron Widow. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in another video of mine very soon. Bye.